Good morning, everyone. We're here for the February 20th regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of County Commissioners in Clear Creek County. Start with public comment. Anybody here in the room come with the idea of making a public comment? Seeing none. Any online?
If you're online and you would like to provide public comment, please raise your hand.
A lot of chatter about the road renaming. I'm surprised no one showed up to make a public comment.
I know, me too. Okay, that's it.
All right, we'll close public comment and we are moving into an executive session immediately. Okay. I move the board moves into executive session to discuss the following matters.
Pursuant to CRS 246424B for the county attorney to meet with the Board of County Commissioners for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions concerning policy and procedure compliance, minimum staffing, and related best practices pertaining to operations at the Clear Creek County Sheriff's Office, and pursuant to CRS 2464F for the county attorney to meet with the Board of County Commissioners for the purpose of discussing personnel matters related to county manager and the county attorney, but not regarding commissioners or elected officials, or to discussions of personnel policies generally.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. The board will now move into executive session. No written minutes will be kept. No decisions will be made. Do you know roughly how long this will take?
I would give it an hour total.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's to allow.
So it'll take however long it takes, but perhaps we'll be back around 9:30. Welcome back. Took a little bit longer than we predicted, but the board is back from executive session. We did not make any decisions. No written minutes were kept. We're back in regular session. And our first item is county commissioner updates. In the interest of getting back on schedule and also reflecting the fact I really don't have anything to add, I will turn it over to you, George.
The only thing I'm going to choose to mention is the GROC conference. It is February 29th at Red Rocks Community College. Gateway to the Rockies Opioid Council is holding its second, we wanted it to be annual, but it didn't happen, 2023 conference. Should be very interesting. We've got Josh Blum coming, who is an academic, to share sort of the landscape of opioid use disorder and what's going on. The Attorney General will be there. Christy Gray Kennedy will be there to talk about legislative topics. And what we're going to try to do is we also will have a lived experience panel from young people who have, interacted with opiates. The intent is to have the presentations kind of get people's brains thinking and then ask them for some feedback about what we've been up to and where we should go. So you both should be in receipt of invite emails. Randy, I see that you signed up. You should also know I have made a couple of requests of staff time, staff support. I asked if our PIO could be there to take pictures. I asked if someone else on our staff can be there just to help with registration, et cetera. Rebecca Abrahamson did that in 2022, but doesn't matter to me who it is. And it's going to be a great time, and I hope you guys can come. And I know invites have gone out to our municipal leadership and our coroner, and also I know that Aaron has committed to being on a panel because our co-responder team got a grant or got funding from the GROC. So thank you to Aaron, and I'm going to be facilitating that panel, so that'll be fun. Nice. And that's my update.
How much funding did we get?
Almost $200,000.
From GROC?
Yeah.
Wow, that's more than, well, that's impressive. Good work.
And our new chat director started today.
I think that's it.
Ready?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the Clear Creek Economic Development Corporation, at least the first night that I was able to be there. It was good to meet with them. Also, the Board of Education meeting that we had was an interesting conversation for sure. And where we touched on, a little bit the potential future of Carlson, and that was probably the major point of discussion while we were there. We also, over on the NOCO side, for the unauthorized trails work that's taking place, we did, and I don't have the name of the contractor right in front of me, but we did go through a process and choose the contractor to do that work that will be happening this year, this summer season, exploring all of the unauthorized trails in the area, both in Forest Service and on county lands. And then also I'm looking forward to the, and also our BoCC retreat that we held. It was a really, I thought, productive time with the two of you and with Peter and Brian. I really appreciate the time and the work that everybody and the thought that everybody put into it. And then finally, with regard to the GROC that George talked about, I did accept the invitation to the one event, and I will probably be kind of auditing their meetings and possibly seeking a seat on the advisory board to the GROC or some other involvement, and have had a communication, or he actually communicated with me, Phil Weiser, about the subject as well. So, that's pretty much all I got.
Okay, county manager update, Brian.
Just a couple of quick reminders. Merrick, we did schedule a mayors and commissioners meeting for next week, February 27th, 8 a.m. at Marion's. Also, the Henderson next quarterly community meeting is next week, February 28th. It's a Clear Creek County only meeting at the Health and Wellness Clinic, no Zoom option, so it's an in-person only meeting. And then just a heads up, staff has been working with Excel and Georgetown staff with respect to sirens that are going in, early warning sirens if the dam were to break. So the first siren's gonna go off on March 6th at 10 o'clock in the morning, so we're probably expecting some phone calls once that goes out.
Which dam was that again?
It's the,
Cabin Creek?
Yeah.
There's several sirens. There's like 4 of them.
we'll stop there.
I did have a real quick one. I was gonna go to Canada to go skiing up there for a period of time, and for a variety of reasons, I gave my spot to my son, so I'll be around. He's going instead of me.
Oh, Dad, that's cool. He beat you up?
No, he's had a rough time. He needed a little time with family, with his sister and his brother-in-law, out of it from Crested Butte. So there's a whole bunch of consent agenda items, 15. Is there anything on there that we need to strike or that someone wants to discuss visually?
I read through them last night and I have nothing to pull. Couple of typical things where we can give, pat on the back, after the motion is made, maybe on a couple of the items, and that's pretty much it.
Okay. Commence reading. Today's consent agenda. Number 1, consideration approval of warrant register. Number 2, consideration approval of 2024 Colorado Parks and Wildlife Shooting Range grant application. Number 3, consideration approval of Colorado Department of Human Services, Colorado Works Memorandum of Understanding for County Department of Human Services. Number 4, consideration approval of 2023 Clifford County Public Trust fourth quarter report. Number 5, consideration approval of Colorado Department of Early Childhood Memorandum of Understanding Amendment Number 1 for Clifford County Department of Human Services. Number 6, consideration approval of January 29th, 24 Board of County Commissioner meeting minutes. 7, consideration approval of January 16th, 2024 Board of County Commissioner meeting minutes. 8, consideration approval of January 17th, 2024 Board of County Commissioner meeting minutes. 9, consideration approval of December 5th, 2023 Board of County Commissioner meeting minutes. 10, consideration approval of February 6th, 2024 Board of County Commissioner meeting minutes. 11, consideration approval of county offices and climate weather policy. Discussed that a year or two ago. Consideration approval of Department of Human Services legal service contract, Sarah Casano, Peter Lickman. Consideration of approval of ratification of State of Colorado subaward agreement, CDOT grant number 24 HTRZL 00253 2024 $5311. 14, considers approval of resolution 2424, resolution authorizing the disposal of 3 Clear Creek County Sheriff's vehicles. 15, consideration of approval of ratification of CDOT administered purchasing agreement for agreement 24 HTRZL 00168 for the roundabout transit acquisition of 2 transit vans.
Second. Or I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion about the items before we vote?
I think that there are a couple of them, number 13, the grant award that we got there. I'm not sure if Beth was most responsible or Beth and Rebecca, but I appreciate the work on that. And the fact that we're getting the 2 new transit vans. And, pretty much every time, I just want to say again that I appreciate all the work that you folks are doing to help bring more funds in to create and maintain services here in the county. Can't say enough about it.
Yeah. Thank you. I think those are the highlights, and just this consent agenda is really, if you're looking for the wins, if you're looking for evidence that Clear Creek County is making big accomplishments, take a look at the consent agenda. What this board doesn't do is spend a lot of time talking about the easy stuff. We spend time talking about the fun stuff. So really encourage the public to take a look at that. This is where our grant awards and all of our successes kind of show up. That's my comment.
Thank you. So with that said, we have a motion and a second to approve today's consent agenda. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks, everyone. Additional action. Oh, George mentioned maybe calling out the fact that we're changing the way we do our agendas as of today. I don't know if anybody noticed, but there's no times on it. In the past, we spent a lot of energy trying to calibrate our efforts to meet specific times, which were Beth's best guess about how things were going to play out, and none of us can predict the future. So from now on, well, we're trying this out, see how it goes, and I'm confident that it's going to work, but we'll see. We're essentially just going to roll through one item to the next in a very efficient manner, with some exceptions. I think the exceptions are if it's a meeting, numerous external stakeholders like CDOT or something along those lines, we will schedule those meetings toward the beginning of the day just to create the least uncertainty from a scheduling perspective, so people aren't sitting around here for hours waiting for their item to come up. George, Randy, do you have anything to add?
No, I think it's a good move, and I think it's a good thing we're doing. We talked about different ways of doing it at the retreat, and I think this is a good start. Hopefully it'll work out well.
Maybe the thing I'd add is if you have comments, if you're a member of the public, member of staff, whatever, we want to hear your comments. It's an experiment.
And I think it's worth noting too, that this is, from what we've learned, how most counties do it. So we're actually transitioning to something that's more best practices than what we were doing. So with that said, moving on to the next action item, consideration of approval of resolution 2421, resolution to declare February 24th, 2024 as Government Communicators Day in Clear Creek County.
Hi there, that's actually my item. Just for some background, I thought that we could put this on here just to let people in the public or residents know what a government communicator is or a public information officer. That's me. I found that a lot of times when I go out in the community and I say I'm the public information officer, people don't really know what the heck that means. So I thought this could be a good way to bring awareness to that. But yeah, I'm basically here. If you guys are watching at home or on Zoom, I'm here to help people answer their questions, keep them informed about things that are going on here in Clear Creek County. I do the newsletter. I do a lot of web updates. I handle social media, all that kind of fun stuff. But Clear Creek County actually has two public information officers, myself and Captain Travis Darrington. He was actually in here earlier, but he isn't here anymore. But he's over at the sheriff's office. So I just wanted the public to know I'm here to help you if you have any questions about anything going on. My email is mheiler@clearcreekcounty.us. And I'm here to help, so.
And I did notice an email I saw this weekend or something I saw somewhere that someone had confused you with a person that was in charge of making
GIS.
something happen. When all you were doing was letting them know it was happening.
I'm the messenger, so.
Right.
But yeah.
I saw somebody trying to slay the messenger.
Yeah.
That's all.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time, but yeah, it's understandable.
And Megan, we did discuss at the retreat doing a communications update during this meeting, so we'll start doing that.
Yes, that would be great. I would love to do something like that.
I'll read the resolution, but before I do that, I wanted to give a shout out to the sheriff's office. I don't know if I'm sure I'm not the only one who's noticed that the quality and frequency of social media posts from the sheriff's office has improved drastically over the last 6 weeks. And I was talking to Brian. I said, "Hey, when did you get Megan to start doing the social media for the sheriff's office?" Because Megan does a great job for us. And he told me that Travis had been doing it, and I think he's doing a really, really good job. And one other thing that's worth mentioning, we had a meeting with the sheriff's command staff and Sheriff Harris this morning. And Sheriff Harris going forward is going to make time to join us at the beginning of our board meetings when at all possible, just to essentially provide an office from the sheriff's department that the public can get an idea firsthand from the sheriff what's going on and some of the initiatives that he's working on. But we were talking in executive session, so I'm not going to provide any details. I'll just say that I was personally very encouraged by the focus and the progress and the accomplishments that the new sheriff and his command staff have made in the first 6 weeks. And I'm very encouraged. So I will read the resolution. Resolution 2421, resolution to declare February 24th, 2024 as Government Communicators Day in Clear Creek County. Whereas the role of government communication professionals is to inform, educate, and engage their communities, And whereas healthy communication in government creates trust and inspires residents to take action and be involved. And whereas government communications create relationships and calls to action, build awareness and understanding through storytelling, engage the public and residents on civic issues, and use all channels to include people in critical decisions. And whereas it is essential to have strong communications in government because it's a foundational element of living in a democracy where citizens have the freedom to make their voices heard. Whereas the Clear Creek County is proud and has deep gratitude and recognition for government communicators' professionalism, dedication, hard work, commitment, enthusiasm, and sacrifice. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Clear Creek Board of County Commissioners does hereby proclaim February 24th, 2024 as Government Communicators Day in Clear Creek County, Colorado, and encourage all residents to thank the members of the Public Information and Communications Department who have dedicated their careers to ensure that Clear Creek County has an effective, impactful, and successful communication strategies that resonate and are relevant, adopted this 20th day of February 2024 at a regularly scheduled meeting of the Clear Creek County Board of County Commissioners. Thank you, Megan. I mean, you have brought a new level of professionalism and energy to this role, and you're making us look good.
Thank you so much. For the record, I did not write that for people to pat me on the back. I did not write that.
Sure, sure.
But thank you. That is very nice. Thank you.
I just want to share before we vote on this resolution, there's some evidence of just how important this position is and communication in general is. Megan's position was created, I believe, in the 2022 budget. We had asked staff which positions they needed to create to have a functional government, and I think there was a list of about 8. What we said is you get one, and we want the leadership team to agree on which one you get. The unanimous feedback was, we need help communicating with the public. I think that says a lot about our leadership team and where their priorities are, and just a lot about, it just reinforces what was in that resolution, right? Government only works and folks know what we're up to, give us input on what we're up to, et cetera. So I'm really glad we have this role. I'm really glad we made a great hire into this role. And I'm really excited for the future because I think we're really just scratching the surface of what it looks like to live in a county that has a really robust public engagement function.
Yep, I can't, I can't say enough good stuff about how good it is. What a good job you're doing, and what a better job we're seeing done also over at the sheriff's department in terms of public communication and how helpful it is and everything they said. So, and you personally do a really great job. So,
Thanks, guys.
I accidentally made the motion last time. I won't do that again. So does anyone want to make a motion?
Move we approve resolution number 2421 to declare February 4, 2024. There's a lot of 24s in that, as Government Communicators Day in Clear Creek County, Colorado.
second,
Good motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
aye.
Thanks again, Megan.
Thank you.
Next item, consideration approval of 2023 Clear Creek County semi-annual treasurer's report. Carol, remind us, you're ready to roll.
I don't really have anything to report other than it's a lot of numbers and it's very small. Do you have questions specifically?
That is a lot of
I don't
numbers.
have specific questions,
Uh-huh.
but maybe just for the sake of the public at a high level, how are things going?
Explain.
Right? Like, are people keeping up? We know there's a big increase in tax bills. Are people keeping up?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
This is as of December 31st, and I will tell you, based on the 2022 tax roll that we had to collect in 2023, my final outstanding at the end of the year was $63 and change. And those are only possessory Forest Service permits that we'll never collect. And I feel like, based on the size of the tax roll, that was a pretty darn good job of collecting all of the money asked to collect last year. As you know, interest rates are going up, and I'm doing the best I can to keep our 30% liquid for accessibility tomorrow, should we need it. Interest rates are running between 4.5 and 5.5 right now. And I'm just scrambling to keep our money interest bearing as opposed to a checking account where we get nothing other than, say, $1 million set aside to cover a payroll or a large warrant list. I don't know what else to tell you. These are all the funds that are due to every other department in the county. Each county has its own fund in the left-hand column. And these are the ending balances as of the end of the year. I'm not quite sure what I can help you or tell you, help you understand. But the Treasurer's Department's been entrusted with investing that money. And the new resolution that y'all signed or approved at the end of last year, we switched the way that investment interest is being distributed. And in January, it was a really high month. That was December. January was $200,602 in interest that went out to all of the new county funds that are now getting the benefit of that interest. That was a lot of money, I think. And it's going to continue to stay that way until rates begin to drop. And again, I have to keep at least 30% liquid.
What is that number? Just for the public to hear, 30%. How many millions is that right now?
I didn't come prepared with that number.
Just approximately.
30. I can't tell you off the top of my head.
How much do we have invested in short-term instruments, I guess is another way of asking,
Short term,
like, money markets.
money markets.
bank accounts.
I didn't come prepared with that either. I'm sorry. I can come back to you with those numbers, but I can't tell you off the top of my head without my laptop.
Okay.
I will tell you, Citywide Banks desperately wants our business back.
Bet they do.
I closed the money market there last year because they were paying us a whopping 0.25% on a couple $1 million. And it wasn't, and I'm getting 4.5 at a really great banking relationship in Boulder called InBank. And sure enough, just last Thursday, Citywide came back and said, we'll match that. I'm not confident of Citywide, and so I'm not inclined to go there. It does us no good except another bank account to balance. If rates begin to drop, I know I'll get a phone call from InBank saying rates will drop, and customer service, I think, is really high.
Mhm.
And it's really important to what we do.
Sean, do I hear you being interested in a work session where we look at how our fund balances are being invested?
I'm just curious. And I mean, you can go buy a fund off the shelf, a retail fund that pays over 5%. That's all invested in risk-free US short-term government treasuries. And I feel a little bit heartless about bank relationships because if it's money that sits there and makes the public money
Right.
and you can liquidate it and move it into a checking account within 48 hours, that makes me, and I'm starting to sound like I want to do your job. I definitely don't want to do your job. But I appreciate you looking around and being open to getting the highest safe rate that we legally can get right now.
I'm trying to think off the top of my head. I have about 8 million at C-Safe. And about 5 million at Colo Trust. Those are local government investment pools. And I have about 8 million at the money market at InBank. And that's collateralized. I'm not worried about that money. And the rest of it, well, as of this morning, it was 2.4 million at citywide checking. But I don't know how many warrants are outstanding, and we have a payroll this week. About 550,000 will come out of that.
Yeah.
And
It's not a big priority for me, but I would like to learn a little bit more about
Yeah,
it.
if you-
You know what? We don't have to take the public's time doing it. Maybe you and I can just.
yeah, that would be good.
I don't have any further.
Yeah, thanks for looking into that though, Sean, taking the time.
Anything else?
Anything else?
No, thank you. Appreciate
Okay.
it. Saying, I appreciate doing the work you do to get the best rates you can on the public's money.
Yeah, thank you.
Make a motion.
We approved 2023 Clear Creek County Semi-Annual Treasurer's Report.
Second.
Motion a second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank
Carol.
you.
Thank you, Carol.
Call me or come by.
Okay, I will do that. Into our regular session. I'm kind of curious, what's the difference between additional action items and regular session?
Different from the consent agenda. I used to just list them under the consent agenda and then everybody got confused and said, are these consent agendas? So I added additional action items.
It should say work session.
Except that we just took action.
No, under regular session, you have the next things on here. It says regular session, it says regular session to discuss.
Yeah.
So those are all
Say
work
work-
sessions rather than
Yeah.
regular sessions. Okay.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
fine. So the next item, which is work session, is session to discuss 2023 Clear Creek County year-end financials. Please join us, Maria.
Morning, commissioners. Megan's gonna pull up a PowerPoint for me here. We try to strike a balance between bringing you timely information. It's hard to believe for me that we're already almost 2 months into the new year. So 2023 is sort of in the back, behind us. But I want to bring you timely information, and I know the county manager wants to get it to you. But we also need to balance that with making sure we've had time to be accurate and make accruals and be prepared to give you the best information possible. Now, our auditors are just starting their work, and they will be back to talk to you in late May, early June with their final report, their audited report. So these are not audited financials, but I want to bring you up to date on some ways that we ended the year, some things that surprised me a little bit. Next slide, please, Megan. Thank you. So first, I'd like to talk about sales tax performance, and there's probably 4 slides in here on that because it took a turn right at the end of the year, a surprising turn downward, pretty significant. So don't know if that was just this holiday season. It sounds like it kind of went on nationwide. It's kind of something that happened in the economy. People sort of really pulled back on spending for this holiday season. I don't know if we're going to be okay. It sounds like this last weekend was just amazing here in town. A lot of activity with that pond hockey. So hopefully that will manifest itself in our sales tax numbers. But then we'll touch on property tax revenue. Round it out with all general fund revenue so you can see where we ended the year in the general fund. And the change in fund balance. And then we'll talk about a little bit about the other county funds and then finally end on ARPA. I understand you guys have given some direction on maybe where some of this ARPA remaining balance will be spent. Next one, please, Megan. All right, so let's talk about sales tax for a minute. So the first bar there, or the first, the blue is 2022. We ended the year at 6.78 million, and that is all funds, right? County, general, EMS, road and bridge. We expect it to be up 5.3% or in the year at 7.14 million. We're actually ending the year at 6.8, so close to flat, slightly better than flat. Now, if you think about inflation, the average inflation for 2023 was 5.2%. So we didn't even track with inflation. And this all happened in October, November, December. Great. Sales tax was doing great. We were trucking along. We were up double digit the first half of the year. And then it was just October, November, December. It really slid, had a big skid that. Let's go to the next slide, please. So
We fell under our projections by about $250,000.
Yes.
Just really quick, anybody that's paying attention to Clear Creek County's economy, I think you would call that a flashing warning sign. This is the first period of time in the last since 2007 or so that we haven't seen really robust sales tax growth.
That's a good point, Commissioner. And at this point, we don't know if this is a trend and this is just something that happened during the holiday season, or if it's a warning that we really need to pay attention to, right? If you think about 2007, a lot of the municipalities saw their housing permits just completely fall off a cliff in 2007, and that was sort of the warning sign of headed into recession. So here's some industries that did well in 2023. Delivery, of course, we know that consumers have changed their behavior and they're tending to get things delivered to them at home rather than going to these brick and mortar locations and shopping. Groceries did well. I think a lot of the grocery uptick had to do with inflation. Things cost more. People didn't necessarily buy more, but it costs more. Energy and that little tractor, or I'm not sure, that piece of equipment, surprisingly, right at year end, equipment leasing and equipment, heavy industrial equipment sales, they scooted their way into our top 10 taxpayers. So this was a pretty significant industry for us all of a sudden at year end. What's flatter down? Furniture and electronics, that category, that's been happening for more than a decade. The cost of electronics has come down. If you think about what you used to pay for a big screen TV 10 years ago, it was almost out of reach economically. It used to be $2,000-$3,000 for a big screen TV. Now it's $200 when they're on sale. So that category has been coming down for years. Bars and restaurants in our community, bars and restaurants was up every single year pretty significantly. And it was slightly negative in 2023. So that also is a worrisome sign, because our tourism, we count on our tourism dollars and spending money in our bars and restaurants. Construction materials, that is, people buying things and having it delivered to their homes, refinishing their basements, painting their houses. That really fell off in 2023 as well. That category was down. All right, next one, please, Megan. So then here is showing you what percentage for each of these categories. And you can see that auto and equipment leasing, which is where that heavy industrial machinery, that was up almost 27% for the year. So kind of a surprise, a pleasant surprise for our sales tax dollars. Convenience stores, I wanted to highlight this one. If you think about your opportunities when you have people driving through I-70, anytime you can capture their sales tax dollars as they kind of blow through our community, and in a way that's as least intrusive to our community as possible, those convenience stores are such an important part of our tax base. It's amazing how much sales tax dollars get spent at a little gas station. Okay, next one, please, Megan. So then these are our top 10 sales tax payers, year-to-date performance, and they really carried us. They are the ones that helped us not be negative for the year. We were up 0.3% overall, and our top 10 was up 11%, but the rest, everyone else, was down collectively 3.9. The top 10 are listed at the bottom there in alphabetical order. You can see that final one listed there, Wagner Equipment, kind of right at the end of the year, just popped in there to our top 10. All right, next one, please, Megan. Property tax revenue, this is all funds. So this would be not only general fund, but this is human services, property tax, open space, property tax, emergency services, GID, property tax, all of that is in here, this number. And you can see that it declined in 23. We knew it would. That was fully expected based on assessed values. We've now had an increase in assessed value. We expect to collect about 12.8, of which 400,000 or 500,000 of that 12.8 is likely to come from the state in the form of backfill.
I have a question for you. On the bottom, is your legend incorrect? It says the 2023 actual is the green, which is the 11.4. Is that?
Yeah, it went down in 23. It declined in 23 from 22.
So our actual so we're underperforming below our projections, or?
No.
It says 2024 budget is the blue
That's
gray.
22, though, 23, those are both actuals.
I get that.
No, we did.
Is the green in the center the actual?
That's the actual.
Okay.
You are correct. Yes.
I was
And it was about what we expected. property tax revenue because of the assessed value and because the treasurer has the ability to actually collect the money on lien properties. We tend to collect what gets assessed for the most part.
Well, my point is that in the budget, we had 12.8, but we collected 11.4.
The 24 budget.
Oh, that's 20.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sorry.
2024. So I really like this graph, Commissioner, because it's showing you we declined, but now we're popping back up. And we're popping back up because those residential assessed values went up. It was a reassessment year.
Yep.
And then the state is backfilling a portion of this.
Yeah, I was looking at the way you had color coded the
Oh.
last, and I didn't notice that the year was different on the final.
Oh,
column,
okay.
That's all, sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go to the next one. So let's look at the general fund revenue by category, major category. In total, taxes, sales tax, property tax, marijuana, excise tax was down 6%. But again, we expected that, right? We knew that because property tax was going to decline in 2023. Intergovernmental was down 41% in large part due to all that one-time COVID funding. So we had a large deposit of FEMA funding come in 2022. We had our second tranche of the ARPA funding come in 2022. And we just didn't have that stuff come in 23. So again, that was kind of expected. Licenses and permits are down for over 2022. That is mostly building permits. And if you think about building projects, if you issue a permit for, a large multifamily project, you're going to collect a lot of one-time revenue. And that's kind of what happened in 22. We didn't have any big projects like that in 23. Investment earnings, the treasurer was here talking about how amazing those are right now. It's a two-edged sword, right? Increase in interest rates certainly helps the county from a revenue perspective, but it also somewhat hurts homeowners in their ability to refinance or move around because of the high mortgage rates. And then contributions and donations, that increase, what you're seeing right there is that first payment from Wallstrom Quarry. Their first 5 or 6 months was due by January 31st, and then we accrued that back into 23. So you're seeing that increase in there.
How did that track to projections?
It was right on track.
Mhm.
I think I expected it to be 195 for the year. It was 7 months worth. It came in at 147. And I remember the check came into the county manager and I said, is your check 145,000? And he was like, I think that's pretty close. So it was close, really close to what we thought it would be. I wonder, just while we're on the subject, does that contribution at all change now that that's being sold? I don't know.
No.
No.
It does not. The agreement was written so that any successor in interest would have to pay it.
So I wonder if it's worth a conversation with the new purchaser just to sit down and sort of remind them of that. So it's not a surprise, an unexpected surprise at year end.
And that's
Same
a
thing with
different
Upper Mountain.
subject that I would love to circle back on in the future is the transaction was completed in January, right? I would love to invite the new owners to come up and introduce themselves and meet us. Vice versa.
Okay, so then let's talk about bottom line in our general fund. Obviously, we've talked a lot about our fiscal cliff, which I'm not sure that I like that term anymore because I think that we're getting it so under control. It's not a cliff anymore, right? We see light at the end of the tunnel. We see a way to find to be successful over the next several years. So 23 revenue was a little better than we projected. It was a little better than budgeted with all of those different categories, and expenses were less than budgeted. So that's kind of the right side of both, right? And so we ended up underwater $400,000. Now you remember 2.8 million was what we were thinking we were going to be underwater for 23. So that's pretty darn good. Now, what are some of the reasons for that? One, we had quite a bit of vacancy savings in those different departments and divisions you see listed there. The assessor was down a position for quite a long time. The clerk was down for most of the year, a position, and she's still evaluating how she's going to move forward with that. She's really trying to take her time to figure out whether or not she has to fill that position and at what capacity. Internal services was down people, the transfer station was down, strategic and community planning, and then of course our transit operations had vacancies. We didn't do CDBG loans in 2023. That's federal funding that we get. And Lindsay at Economic Development was working really hard to get that new contract signed. You all, I think, adopted that in November and passed it. So now they can start working on loans again. But, we had budgeted to spend about 230 on these economic development loans and then didn't have a single one in 2023. ARPA carry, sorry?
Is as a federal pass through, how would that? Because that's revenue and expense, right?
Correct. So
how would that not happening affect our ending fund balance?
well, I'm sorry, I'm confused. I moved into the second half of the slide here and I'm talking about who's under budget, what's under budget. So this is the budget you said, and you're right, that had no impact because the money didn't come in and the money didn't go out.
Right,
So
so
it didn't impact the bottom line, but it did make us under budget because we didn't spend the money that you budgeted on these loans. Yeah. And then finally, stop loss and the rebid on that stop loss insurance and the health insurance savings and the combination of work done there. In going back and looking at the money that got sent out to the divisions with employees in 2023, it was 459,000 in savings.
can we emphasize that you saved $459,000 per year by rebidding your health insurance?
Yes.
How long had it been since we had rebid health insurance in the past?
I'm not sure how long a lot of this had to do with stop loss. And I know you're probably familiar, Commissioner, with stop loss, but maybe not all of our listeners are. Stop loss is we're self-funded for insurance, health insurance, and stop loss protects us if we have a really large claim over $100,000.
Reinsurance is another word for it, right?
Correct. You got it. You got it, sir. And I don't know how long it had been. And I know that when I came and started working with who was the benefit broker at the time, and I asked them to go out and rebid this, there was a little bit of pushing involved to get them to do it. But in addition to this 459,000, I think moving forward, we're going to have a consistent 700,000 or 800,000 in savings a year because we actually got a new benefits broker. We rebid all benefits, and that was the work that finance did with HR and with the new HR director. We brought someone on board. The county manager brought someone here who was actually really willing to sort of peek behind the curtain and let someone in to look and see, are we doing what we can to do our best? So that was a tremendous win. And it didn't hurt. It didn't impact anybody. It didn't increase anyone's premiums. It was just pretty amazing, actually. But that definitely is leading to that positive change in fund balance, right? That we thought we'd be a lot worse off than we are.
Health insurance might actually be better if you combine Amaze in there with what that's providing.
Yeah, and we gotta do more to educate our employees about that. But Amaze is it is a pretty amazing benefit, right? And it helps us keep healthcare costs down. So it's a benefit for the employee, but also helps us keep costs down. All right, so that's the general fund. And let's look at some of our other funds now. So our road and bridge fund was actually under budget as well. And that is mostly due to, there were some vacancies throughout the year, but they have a lot of capital carryover. They've got some large projects going on. So Upper Bear Creek Road will carry over into 2024. You all approved that capital carryover in the budget, and they will continue to work on that project and spend. Emergency telephone, I also refer to this sometimes as E911 fund. They were under budget. One of the projects that you approved in one of your amendments to 23, the Evergreen Fire Protection District actually served as the fiscal agent on that project. So we didn't end up spending 100%. We ended up spending 50% because we reimbursed EPD when they did the work. Open space was under budget, 146,000. They were sharing in a little bit of those stop loss savings because there's an employee in the open space fund, but they also didn't acquire any land. The commissioners had budgeted 100,000 to buy land in 2023. There just wasn't any opportunities or projects that came up. And so they didn't end up spending that. Next slide, please, Megan. Lodging tax was under budget, 283,000. We had that.
Sorry to,
Sir.
one thing that we haven't talked about, and maybe if it's not coming, potential savings from JeffCom. Is that going to be brought up at all today?
Not today.
And we're switching over quite soon.
Yeah, not today, but that would be a 2024 impact. And we do owe you a work session on that. I need to talk with the county manager, but we need to talk about what you want to happen with that budget once we make that transition. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Lodging tax. Lodging tax was under budget. Now, we knew it would be, right? We'd been talking about that a couple times throughout the year. With that voter authorized change in the fall of 22 to allow us 60% or more to go towards something other than tourism promotion. So it's accumulating fund balance. It's sitting there. It's waiting. It's there and available when the commissioners make decisions about how to spend this money. Ambulance sales tax was under budget 108.
That one, I remember seeing a number like 187. How did we just collect more lodging tax than we predicted? In terms of what would be left over after the Tourism Bureau's budget was addressed.
So
Either their budget was less or we collected more money.
yeah, it's possible. I'm not remembering the 187 off the top of my head. I don't know if that was what I said would be left in fund balance, 187, or did I say we'd save 187, be under budget? I don't remember.
That was the 40%.
Was it in that spreadsheet that I shared with you?
Yes.
There were,
It was. Yeah, it's a close number. I was just curious.
So
Look at it later.
if you look at the expense column on lodging tax, the expenses were 191,000 and almost all of that went to the Tourism Bureau.
Right.
So that 180 something is probably in that number.
No, the 180 was what was left over after. But look,
In fund balance.
Yeah.
Right. And that net change would show you that 213,000 is left in fund balance, right? Instead of 187, 213,000 is left in fund balance.
What might be helpful, just a quick comment. Lodging tax now has several purposes. It's a little bit different than some of these other funds. Might be helpful to think about how we're displaying that info.
Okay,
I don't know how, I don't know what the.
kind of more like, maybe more like how the general fund has multiple functions and departments and you get a lot of details on the general fund. Maybe a little more detail on this one.
I don't have a solution, and I'm not really saying this is a big problem.
Okay. Okay, so your memory's correct, Commissioner. You are remembering 187. It has to do with 2024. We're
Okay.
talking about 2023 today. So we thought that in 2023, based on this chart, that generated for that 60% would be 228,000, and we actually ended the year at 213,000. So not quite 228, not quite as high, but close.
Okay.
213,000. So good memory. All right, so we are talking about ambulance sales tax. They also have a lot of employees. They shared in this stop loss rebid. We were able to send savings to the ambulance fund as well. And then they also did not expend all the C-chat money that they thought they would. I think their software that they were going to buy wasn't quite as expensive as expected. Maybe the vehicle wasn't quite as much as they were expecting. And so that money that's part of those grant funding programs will continue on in 2024 to be spent for that C-chat effort. Next slide, please. In our capital projects fund, we have two main projects going on right now, the shooting range and Floyd Hill parking lot. That's what was happening in 2023. Both of those are carrying over into 2024. We'll see a lot of spending on those. And in fact, earlier today, you approved another grant application for the shooting park. So we'll see that happening. Human Services was under budget about $500,000. Most of that is food assistance. That's a straight pass through. So residents in our community get food assistance benefits and the state reimburses us for those benefits. So it's just an in and an out. And the federal subsidy on food assistance changed in March of this year. The COVID level subsidy that has been in place since 2020 was dropped back down, unfortunately, for our residents right at a time when food is a lot more expensive, but that happened. So we were under budget there. Public health was under budget 131,000. They also have a lot of employees and got some of that stop loss savings in their fund, but they also have a training program that Mountain Youth Network was going to carry out in 2023. And that work's really just getting underway in 2024. So that's going to carry over into 24 and we'll see that there. Our health clinic debt service fund, we were on budget with spending. There is a positive change in fund balance. You can see that 1.2 million in fund balance was generated, which helps. That'll sit there and help to pay off that debt service on the health clinic.
It's 2 years worth of payments.
Yep, got it. Just about exactly right. Okay, so let's finish with ARPA here. And I know that you all have provided some input and feedback on how this can be spent. I redid this chart a little bit because I think all three of you were keyed into the interim final rule that was published in November that made a big deal of the word obligated and what is the definition of obligated. And in reading that final rule, obligated seems to be contractually obligated, not just I said I want to spend it on this. I desire to spend it on this, but I'm under contract with someone to spend it. So I redid this chart in a way that shows you what you've already spent or have contractually obligated, what you've committed to, we're not under contract yet, and then what the available balance is. And I understand we have some direction on the available balance. And I don't know if you want to talk about any of that or that's this. I know there was some direction for shooting range, childcare, and a community foundation. And again, just want to make the point again of this word obligated and just getting things under contract in a way that this money is obligated by 12/31/2024. That rounds out my presentation and update. Any other questions or comments?
Somewhat related question, but I know it's early to ask, but what is your feeling about how the 2024 budget is shaping up?
Well, I have to tell you how impressed I've been with Sheriff Harris, right? That this is the one area, we were over budget. The sheriff's office and the coroner's office was over budget in 2023, and they were over budget the year before and the year before that. We've worked with the coroner. He understands his budget. He's made some tweaks and adjustments as of last fall. I think he's fine and he's going to be fine. I know the AP staff and finance have made comments of how different things seem already in January and February, and just a real conscientious effort on the sheriff and all of his staff's part to think about what are we spending money on? Do we need it? Is it oversized? Is it more than we need? Do we even need it? And they're doing a really good job of that. So I'm hopeful that the sheriff's going to be able to stay within the budget and manage that. And we're going to look for more savings. We're going to try. We want to do this in a way. We want to come up with savings in a way that's invisible to the residents, invisible to customers, does not impact services. And I think the kind of in the county general fund, the only department that's sort of left to do that with might be the sheriff's office.
Right.
I'm hopeful.
And the most clear example of that is a couple slides ago. Rebid stop loss insurance save $500,000 a year. This has nothing to do with the services that are received by people. We're just
Right.
saving $500,000 a year.
Right. Nothing to do with the services, and it doesn't hurt our employees, right? We didn't have to change health insurance premiums. We've held health insurance premiums flat for 3 years in a row now, which is a goal of mine to try to do that if we can. So
More about whether or not you have an HR director or a sheriff or somebody else that wants to regularly check in on these systems.
yeah, and it doesn't always feel good when I'm asking questions and scratching and trying to peek behind the curtain, but it works, right? We've proven several times now that this is how we find these things, is by doing that. Yeah.
Next.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else. Storage rent.
I don't. No, thank you.
All right, thanks. We'll see
Presentation.
you again in May or June, the audit report.
And I didn't have your presentation.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
Saves putting my glasses.
All right. So the next item is going to be an item on every agenda until we figure out what to do. But it's a work session to discuss the Clear Creek the Clear Creek Fire Authority organizational review next steps. And Brian, it has your name on it.
It's got my name on it, but I think it's really here for you guys to continue that conversation.
I have a question. The last time we discussed this, I believe it was our last regularly scheduled meeting. We expressed a desire to schedule regular meetings with the other elected and stakeholders who also are in receipt of this report and have the same common interests that we do. How's that going?
You mean municipalities?
Yeah, we had a meeting with the municipalities like a month ago.
Sure.
And we all agree we need to keep meeting.
Well, you've got a mayors and commissioners meeting next week. I kind of assumed it was gonna be on that agenda.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, all the municipalities will be
Make
there.
that a subject too,
Yeah.
just to touch it on some level there. Thing I don't like about, well, one of the things that's different about that meeting is it's not broadcast, it's not recorded.
Sure.
Even though it is a public meeting.
I mean, the other shortcoming is that it's not the four mayors and the three commissioners that are making this decision.
Right.
Sure.
It's the 30 or so local elected officials
Mhm.
that need time to
Town
discuss this. And so I think like clarifying that what we want to do is find a time that we can regularly schedule monthly meetings of that group of 30 or so elected officials in Clear Creek County is what we need to do.
At least have them all invited, have the opportunity.
Exactly. Including, we have members of the Fire Authority Board who have a lot of context and I believe should be free to participate in these meetings, whether they're on a council or not.
Are we gonna poll people for what dates work? Or are we just gonna set a meeting and invite?
Maybe start with one and end at the other if we have to. We have to have these meetings.
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I would work with your counterparts.
Monthly.
So maybe this should be a topic at the mayor's commission.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we schedule this?
How do we get it scheduled?
'Cause it's complicated. to get
Yeah, and
this
I've got a
many.
meeting set up with Georgetown and Idaho Springs together in the next week. My counterpart's there, so I can bring it up also there.
And I think I remember our commitment is to do this in the evenings.
To do the larger meeting you're talking about.
Whenever
As far as the
available
mayors and
to the public too.
commissioners meeting, I think it is good at the agenda for the mayors and commissioners meeting that everybody that is coming to it is prepped to at least give the latest update or information they have at those meetings as well, which would be helpful. And so that they come in prepared to say, well, here's how it's going in our community with the discussion or something to that effect. So it's a good checkup point. What do you think about that? Think that's worthwhile or?
Yeah, I think talking about how we can get this scheduled the right way with the mayors is a great step. The other thing that I think is a really important next step, and it's something that only Clear Creek County can do, is assess how we would operationalize that recommendation that the fire department come inside of Clear Creek County, right? That the ESGID operate the fire department rather than the fire authority. I think there are a lot of legal questions, financial questions, human resources questions. I think not only me in this board, but boards of the 5 jurisdictions need a lot more detail about what this looks like to really have something to evaluate. And that's on us. So I would ask for that to happen as like sort of among the top priorities of our team in this conversation is just, I presume that's something you're already on.
Yes, it's already.
And it's kind of similar to the sheriff's office budget conversation where to understand financial implications, Maria, I presume you would agree with this, to understand financial implications of a move, we really kind of need to have a pretty detailed understanding of the fire authority's budget and operations. Is there something that this board can do to help that?
Well,
I think just getting access to information would be helpful, right? And my biggest challenge in understanding it is not having access to information. I know the county manager and I had a conversation this morning. The 4 or 5 full-time staff members are in FPPA. So that's something we'll have to talk about. And we're not in FPPA, but we are in Social Security. And so if that comes under the auspices of county, that's something we'll have to have some conversations and discussions with FPPA, because they probably won't be in FPPA anymore.
They're volunteers, I think, for FPPA also.
Correct. And I've seen a lot of governments, you're absolutely right about that, Commissioner. I've seen a lot of governments where they leave their volunteers in FPPA, they leave that intact. Because it's a whole different program. But the employees themselves, if the ESG is operating them, that's a county department, and we are in Social Security and we are not in FPPA. So just getting access to the information. I mean, I've seen a budget for 2023. I think I saw the budget. I've seen 22 financials, audited financials, but that's it. You know, and there's a lot of information that go into those financials, and it would be nice to be able to see behind the scenes, kind of think about what are some of the hurdles, what are things you need to be aware of.
So what does that look like? Does that look like asking for the fire chief to make some time to sit down with you?
Possibly. I know trust is a hard thing, right, for the fire chief, and I don't know why. I don't know what led to that. I know he likes to put his own spreadsheet together, his own numbers and spreadsheet, and then just hand it to you.
Based on the actual underlying data.
Yeah, but it would be, I mean, I don't know. I need to see probably some vendor information.
I'll tell you that, I think that, yes, also resolving that, because when we were doing the budget, actually, I think he ended up budgeting with your revenue projections, but I have heard him say in fire authority board meetings that there's differences of opinion on which numbers are accurate.
Mhm.
I'd love to know that you guys are on the same page, because the facts are out there somewhere.
Right.
The other
Does Mission CIT have the actual numbers?
thank you. That's the other element of this. We have asked the fire authority staff they also suggested that maybe the numbers Mission CIT was using or reporting were not accurate. And I've asked them to, in writing, state where the inaccuracies are and what's factual, and back that up. And so that's maybe a conversation that would be helpful for you to have too.
Yeah.
And I've reached out to Mission CIT also, get
Yeah.
something set up to talk, where they talk about that.
I don't know much about the fire authority. I mean, somehow he runs his payroll, but I don't know who physically does that, right? Is he paying a firm to produce paychecks every 2 weeks or once a month? I don't know these things. And those are things that certainly cost money. And if they're part of us, we don't need to be paying that anymore, right? We have a payroll system. We have software. We'll make that payroll as part of our process.
Right. And so what we need is beyond just like a list of transactions, like we really need kind of an understanding of the operation.
Yes, exactly.
So
Yes.
That's all really helpful.
as we
for me to be
talk
able to
this
say.
through out loud right now, does the fire chief need some direction from his board to cooperate?
I think the fire chief has that direction.
Okay.
And so, if we're not seeing cooperation, I think his board should know.
Won't any savings be possibly offset by the administrative assessment that would happen?
Well, we're imposing an administrative assessment. Again, your memory's really good. 40,000, 30,000 a year to collect tax, disperse tax. We have an outside consultant, a third-party consultant calculate that. But if they're part of us, I don't know that we'd have that anymore. But I don't know how he's operating. I don't know if he has an admin assistant and some payroll person. He's paying for general ledger software, right? Because we wouldn't need to pay for
Yeah.
that. We already have that.
Part of the equation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Analysis.
We just don't know those things right now.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I mean, it's a public entity. Shouldn't those things be public information?
Well, the financials are the audited financials, but there's an awful lot of stuff that goes into an audited financial that I don't know. And again, I love, like Chief Babion, but this is hard, right? It's hard when someone's peeking into your house and
Yeah.
scratching and looking. It doesn't feel good. But we can't understand it without doing it.
Right.
I mean, has the fire authority board discussed what we're talking about right now? I mean, we're talking about an analysis of the cost of assuming fire department operations with our ESD. Has the fire authority board discussed that?
No, the fire authority board has discussed sort of we had a long conversation about what our role is in this conversation as a fire authority and fire authority board. And is our role to have real strong opinions about the governance and the tax rate conversation, which is really a decision made by other bodies? Or is our role to really dig into those operational recommendations and help inform the jurisdictions, right? Is that 18 mil number accurate? Do we actually need all those FTEs, right? It's only that organization that can really respond, I think. And that's what that organization needs to do and is chosen to do. And obviously there's people wearing a lot of different hats on that board. And so they have opinions, and we'll see the extent to which we can have the discipline to stay focused on that element of the conversation.
The only reason I ask is we just have to be in full transparency, right? We're talking about a complete analysis of whether or not in the end, we think it makes sense to take over the operation.
Yeah, whether we think we can do it.
Take over, it sounds wrong, but I mean, it's assuming responsibility for fire service is what it is.
Yeah, it's an interesting line when you think about 5 jurisdictions trying to figure out how to collaborate on something as important as fire protection. And what's the line? If there's, I'm trying to remember this, help me recreate this line. How do you hold anybody accountable when you can't identify a person that's responsible, right? And this is what's happening in fire authority, right? We get a report that says you're understaffed, you don't have enough tax money, and you haven't figured out a way out of it. And whose fault is that? It's not actually relevant to the conversation, which is really good because we have no way of knowing, because there are 5 jurisdictions who are responsible for steering this ship together. So I think the next steps that make sense is get the meeting scheduled, have staff do their analysis. I'm gonna communicate to the fire authority board that we need Maria and Kelly and maybe Maria and other members of the team, right? And Kelly to really sit down and ask and answer a lot of questions. The third thing that's on my mind is some of those operational comments like blocking involve our EMS and their perspectives. And while in the appendices, there's a little bit of information about what EMS's opinion is, I think we just need to ask EMS to articulate a response in writing to this report. Those elements that touch you, right? I think this report begs a lot of important questions about what it looks like on scene in an emergency response environment, right? I see in writing that it could be safer if we hurried. And I think that's a little bit in conflict with the way it's looked at in other areas. And we really need to, I think, comment openly, right? On some of those subjects.
I can sit down, Aaron and I can sit down and talk about that. What that looks like. And I think we need to go through the entire report on all the various aspects of it specifically touches the county.
And lastly, sorry, this probably isn't even lastly, but the other thing, there are recommendations in this report that are directly to this organization, right? This jurisdiction. There's a comment in there that our building codes are not adequate.
There are buildings, what?
Our building codes are not adequate. I would like to see us move towards evaluating whether we want to adopt modern building codes. My bias is the answer is yes for myself.
Well, I wouldn't, not sure I'd say modern, but more up to date.
I think.
You're right, because we're not being asked to do modern. We're being asked to go to 2018.
I
Sorry.
think we asked to go, I thought that our building inspector said he wanted to move to the 21 code. Is that correct?
I don't remember off the top of my head if it was 21 or not.
21.
You shake your head, yeah.
That's what I remember. He, at the time, he wanted to go to the most
The latest.
up-to-date code that there was, the latest one, and I thought that we were,
We're heading that way, yeah.
so now,
That should be coming shortly, actually.
what that may not address though is you're coming in state law of the WUI code that wouldn't have been in the 21 code.
Sure.
You know, that we, and that's, I think that's where the fire authority would have its greatest interest.
I don't have anything else.
I think those are sort of the immediate things to focus on.
Well, I'm glad we're setting up a timeline for further discussion and, you know, with them in a couple of different settings. The code's a good thing to bring up too.
One of the things I think we need to start framing sooner rather than later is a little more detail about what the three different options could look like. And with respect to coming under the ESD, the thing that the report didn't even attempt to address is how do you achieve savings and efficiencies by having two organizations with common leadership and common funding? And there's a variety of different models in the state for how people have done it. The most expensive model, in my opinion, which is what Eagle County has and which is what Denver Health and Denver Fire has, is essentially two fiefdoms under the same roof where there's not a lot of crossover. And I would suggest we might not be able to afford that one. And that's what's essentially reflected in the report, in the mission CIT report. So at some point, I think we're going to need to roll up our sleeves and do a little more work around what would make sense here. I think Aaron and his organization are obviously key stakeholders in that conversation. Are we good with finishing there?
I think so.
And is there anything else that we need to discuss, Peter? All right, thanks for coming. With that, we're adjourned for the day.